Right, well, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well. And thank you for joining again today. So this is our second instalment of the webinar. So we're going to be providing recruitment updates with guest speakers from some of our framework providers this morning. Just to say that the webinar is for public sector organisations, so we can provide updates in the market, but I know there's a few suppliers that's joining on too. Everyone's going to be muted, but there's an opportunity for you to ask questions through the chat function, which should be on the bottom bar or the right hand side, depending how your screen's set up. So you can send questions, or if you want to have a conversation through the chat function as well. So as I've said, this is the second instalment of the provider webinars, where last week we had 3 providers talking about different recruitment topics. Matrix talked about how data shows COVID-19 effects on temporary staff. We had Guidant, who gave us an update on sort of future workforce planning, and Reid talked about the impact of COVID-19 on children's and adult social care services. Last week's webinar is available to download from the YPO website if anybody's interested in seeing that one as well, or I'm happy to share it if anyone wants to drop us an email or send us a message on the chat function as well with your email address. But the aim for today's webinar is to provide updates on different key topics in the sector and how COVID-19's impacted recruitment in different ways. We've all seen lots of changes to our working lives, potentially due to home working, and just how we may be getting back into the office as well, and how we're all communicating now using technology in this sort of virtual world that we're all in right now. There's been lots of changes in relation to recruitment, demanding key areas and how people continue to recruit virtually. We've been supporting lots of different customers over the last few months in different ways, and we're starting to see customers come out of the reactive stage and start thinking about the future of recruitment and thinking about the re-procurements as well. So things are starting to change. We are seeing that now. So just to give you a bit of info on the webinar today, we've got 3 providers to come on to talk to you about different topics and just about things of how things are changing in recruitment. And each of the providers have got about 20 minutes to talk to you about the topic, and then there's opportunities to ask questions either at the end or through the chat function throughout the discussion. So the providers and topics we've got on today, just to let you know what's happening in the order. So we've got Capita going to be talking about new approaches to delivering HR services. We've got Comensura that are going to talk about supporting social value through temporary workforce. And then we've got North Yorkshire County Council, which is the resourcing solution, to talk about care and support staff to both local authorities and care providers. And as I said, at the end, there will be the opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to actually bring now forward Capita, who are going to be the first ones to talk. So I think we've got Andy already on. So I'm just going to make you a co-host, Andy, so you can share your screen. And I'm going to spotlight you for a second as well, so you can jump forward. There we go.
Gosh, that's scary. I can suddenly see the full screen. You should have been a warning that was going to happen.
Sorry. There we are. So yes, so if you want to make a start and do intros into yours, thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. And morning, everybody. And thank you to YPO for inviting us along for 15 to 20 minutes. And thank you all for joining, and I hope everyone's staying safe and well in these difficult times. My name's Andy Dolby. I am a public sector specialist at Capita, and as you can all now see my haircut for COVID, I've also got an extras part in Peaky Blinders, the next series, so apologies for that, but I'm sure we're all looking slightly different than we do normally. I'm joined today by my colleague Gemma Hardy-Moore. I have no idea how to flip to a screen to get Gemma to say hello to you, but she will join us at different points during the course of the presentation. You'll see that I'm kind of mimicking what we've all seen on the news, that when people broadcast from their homes, they all sit in front of a bookcase, because that implies that we're clever and experts. So no looking over my shoulder to the books on the bookcase. But we've got a sort of 15 to 20 minute presentation to share with you today. My view on webinars are always that we would like to try and make them interactive, because this session is to share things which we have of interest to you. And if you can give us some feedback using the chat functionality, which Lucy's probably introduced to you. And if you have questions or if you have comments during the course of the conversation, we would really, really appreciate those, because it just makes it more, because if it's just me talking to a screen, we could have recorded it and just sent it to you. So please make comments. They don't all have to be nice. But if you have questions, we'll try and answer them during the course of the session. We've also, under very, very, very strict instructions, that we're not to sell Capita. So whenever I do any of these kind of things, I always introduce a yellow and a red card series process. So if you think I'm getting a little bit too salesy and a little bit too Capita, please just put yellow card in the chat functionality, and that will tell me to tone it down. And if you think we've gone too far, just put red card in it and we'll stop and we'll start all over again. So anyway, so what do we want to talk about today? First thing I want to say is, congratulations to the YPO, because I think YPO brought to market a very, very interesting framework that's actually going to help to meet a number of the key challenges which we think HR and OD are facing at the moment right across the public services. And the reason why we think it's such a great framework is, whilst focusing on permanent and non-permanent recruitment, the provision of a gateway to be able to bring in HR additional services, we believe, gives HR functions across the public sector an opportunity to think differently and innovatively around how they start to harmonise all of their activities to meet some of the challenges which we will face. And that's what we want to talk about. So I know a number of the other people contributing to these sessions are going to focus very much exclusively on resourcing, but we just want to expand that conversation into a wider discussion around HR, because we think that's one of the big advantages which the YPO framework provides. Now, hopefully, I'm now going to be able to share a screen. And if this doesn't work, I'm expecting someone's going to tell me that I'm showing you my shopping list or my personal emails. Can Lucy give me a thumbs up?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, brilliant.
We now see it, and I'm just going to go to presentation mode. Good. Okay. So what's the starting of all of this? So we're thinking around HR. We're thinking around how you now provide HR services to your organizations. And we're just going to bring in two or three examples of things which have happened, which we've been part of during COVID, which we think provides a new pathway. And I'm going to share a couple of examples with you. And depending on how brave I am at the end, I might also share a secret with you. But we'll see how we get on, and we'll see how nice you are to us in the chat as to whether I tell you a secret at the end. So anyway, off we go. What was the starting point of during 2019, Capita undertook a huge amount of research into the labour market and how things were changing as a consequence. This research, which was called Human to Hybrid, essentially looked at the impact that technology was having on recruitment, on learning, and on the provision of other HR services. What that research told us was that organisational leaders believed that there was going to have to be a fundamental change in the way organisations conducted themselves and how that impacted on them. And they were telling us that it really fell down into three areas. An impact on digital technology, how that was going to be deployed, how we were going to use data, more importantly, how this was actually going to impact on our employees and our workers and how things were going to have to change. And this wasn't just a nice to have. The research told us, in fact, that 72% of organisational leaders said that this was going to be the biggest challenge they were going to have to face over the next 5 years. It was a now initiative. I mean, we did this research around about a year ago now, actually, and 93% of organisational leaders said they needed to get on with this now, and they needed to see this huge shift over the next 12 months. And they felt that it had some real implications, that if they didn't manage this transition to a new digital technology-driven working environment, 51% of their employees were telling us that they would actually leave because it would be such a stressful and disruptive change and transformation that they just simply would not be able to continue working within their organisation. And business and organisational leaders were very, very specific around where that change needed to happen. Their view was it needed to happen within HR. What was really interesting about the research was it didn't say that HR just needed to change. HR needed to do things differently. The word that came out was radically change. there had to be an absolutely fundamental change in the way that HR now supported organisations and moved forward. During the course of last year, I was fortunate that I was able to take this research out and present it in association with organisations like the PPMA, for those of you who might be members. And we presented our research at a number of their regional events, and we shared it with groups in the NHS, and we shared it with heads of recruitment, in fact, in higher and further education. And what the feedback across the public sector was, yes, we absolutely agree with you. We need to change and we need to deliver HR differently. We absolutely agree that this is something that we need to get on with and it's important and we need to do it now. But we've got to be honest with you, Andy, we haven't done anything. We are really nowhere in this agenda at all. And we're nowhere for a range of reasons. We just don't have the time to be able to step back from our operational imperatives to drive this change and make these things happen. We just don't have the resources. There aren't enough people in our HR functions to be able to drive this change. We don't have the expertise and capability to be able to think through these changes and how they work together. And we've got this incredibly complicated portfolio, ecosystem, whatever today's latest word is, of HR partners who work with us for permanent recruitment or non-permanent recruitment or occupational health. An amazing myriad of organisations that we work with, and they're all dealing with us under different contracts, under different frameworks. So whilst we absolutely understand that we need to make change, fundamentally it's just been too hard and we haven't had the time to do it. And so whilst we started to see quite significant change within the private sector, what we hadn't seen was the public sector being able to respond to the change. We think that change is absolutely essential, and we actually think that we're in a transformational moment for HR businesses, how we all work with our. And Lisa, just so you know, I've just realised we're on slide 5, and this is slide 6 of 713 slides, so I'm just going to accelerate a little. Okay, you see me present. Why do we need to make those changes, and what do those changes start to look like within HR and recruitment? So we think there's a range of things which we now need to focus on. I think there's a range of challenges that you're now facing. First of all, it's around relevance, and it's not just about cost reduction anymore. It's actually about how does HR and OD actually create value within the organisation. Not about doing transformational events and saying we're going to transform this from here to here and that being an event that happens for a 3-month period. It's actually around continuous improvement now being continuous, and how can we show progressive improvements in productivity and service user experience. It's about doing it at a pace that we've never ever experienced before. And whilst we used to talk about 1 to 2 year change and transformation processes, we're talking about things having to happen within days, weeks or months. We're having to do with things which are disruptive. We're having to think about jobs that we've never recruited for. We're having to think about skills which we would have not traditionally thought of as being vital within our public services. And we're having to think about how we bring all of those things together to think about disruptive ways of delivering service into our communities and into our organisations. That's driving greater collaboration, and it's making it more important that the things that we do are actually aligned to the broader strategic objectives of the organisation. And that's actually making us think about risk and how do we drive change, and how do we enter into contractual relationships, and how do we work with our supply partners, and how do we work with their supply chain in a new and different way to make all of these things happen, so that HR can actually be measured against a set of transformational goals around: are we exceeding our user expectations? Those are our internal users, our hiring managers, our departmental managers, as well as the end service users for our public. Can we show that we're delivering process efficiency value? Is that measurable? Are we factoring in behavioural and cultural change? Are we being more reliable in the delivery of our services? Are we ensuring that all of the things that we do? And actually, is HR and OD now actually part of the organisational decision-making process? Are we providing our organisations with more timely information to make decisions? Do we have clear performance metrics? are our decisions and insights evidence-based? And actually, are we turning that around from just being reporting to insight? And actually, are we actually providing foresight? Have we got to the stage where we're now looking forward and saying, on the basis of the things that we do, can we actually predict what's going to happen? So there's some pretty tough stuff that we need to do. And that change is only going to continue at pace. And the way that we think about delivering HR into our organizations is only going to become more complex. And a really nice model that Ernst & Young, EY as they're now called, have developed, and we're very pleased to give them credit for it, where they look at the kind of 5-stage evolution of vision of HR as part of shared services and into organizations. And I think when we talk to organizations, most of them currently sit around level 3, where you will probably have a shared service center where HR and recruitment activities from a transactional basis happen. And you will probably have a center of excellence for HR and OD that's looking at policy. What the EY model is telling us, and Gartner have a similar model, and Capita have a similar model, and there's a general trend, is that actually, as we look forward into the future, the way those HR shared services will be structured will be different. And you won't actually be able to recognize HR as being distinct from finance in the future, and things will become very process driven, and we will talk about hire to retire, or we'll talk to procure to pay. So those traditional functional alignments will break down. And moving forward, and sorry to say this to everybody who's sitting in an HR function or recruitment function, actually within centers of excellence, those normal organizational structures will start to fall away, and we will no longer be structured around HR and OD or finance or IT, and will actually be clustered around analytics experts or automation experts or customer insight experts. All of this tells us is the way that we deliver HR into our organizations is going to continue to change. Not a change which is optional, because it's going to happen around us and we need to take control of it. When we look back at what's happened previously, we have to kind of say it hasn't gone brilliantly well. When we go out and we talk to heads of HR shared directors, and we say, how have you tried to change the delivery of HR services and recruitment services into your organization? They will talk to us primarily around, well, we're going to a process-centric approach where we're trying to introduce self-service for our hiring managers. We're trying to introduce self-service for them to be able to take HR transactions. And when we ask them how that's gone, and when they've done user experience testing of their hiring managers and departmental managers, what we're finding is universally, actually, the satisfaction levels have declined. So what we thought was a good step forward in the way that we would provide hiring managers with direct access to recruitment activities or HR activities has actually had a detrimental impact on their satisfaction and their service experience. So it's really important as we go into that next stage and we start to introduce these new digital experiences, that actually it's not just about cost reduction, it's not just about process efficiency, that we're focusing far more on the user experience for our departmental managers and our hiring managers. So the question you might ask is, well, why don't we just crack on with it then? You know, if it's such a great idea and we all universally agree that it's something we need to do, surely it can't be that difficult. You actually break it down into the constituent elements and you think about the things that we're actually, you talk about the things that we would need to do differently to give our HR resourcing services a different look and feel, but also to achieve the goals we talked about. Actually, you need to start thinking about your entire policy, strategy and governance. You need to think about the user experience. We need a completely new approach to data insight. We need to think about complete step change process enhancement, automation and automation. We need to think about changing the whole culture and behavior of our organizations. Probably it means looking at your technology core, and you might have an on-prem solution of Oracle or Cornerstone, and you're probably all talking about how you go to the cloud. Everyone will be telling you that you now need every digital application that you could possibly think of to enhance the experience and make it effective. And that's going to have a fundamental impact on service delivery and agility. And the sort of proposal that we're making today is, can those things actually change and be done differently under traditional engagements? And I think all of our experiences would say, no. If we could, these changes would have happened. Our premise is that the way that we've seen organisations change during COVID would suggest that there is a new and that there is a different way of moving forward. We're just going to give you some idea of why it's so complex. That's actually potentially a snapshot of your organisation. In the across the top are all of the things that you might do from you will probably have or be thinking about a whole complex range of different applications that you'll want to use. You'll probably have quite a complex supplier partnerships organizations that you bring in to help you on, whether it's on learning, whether it's on occupational health. Even if you decide to go for a managed service relationship on permanent and non-permanent recruitment, there's then a vast PSL of organisations that sit behind that. And somehow what we're asking you to do is to transform and change all of these things and try and coordinate and shape these things in a way that works differently, where you can actually get all of the providers of that, of all of those services to actually work in a new and different collaborative way to provide joined up solutions. You know, of course, is you can simplify that model and you can take some of those activities back internally. You will look at introducing new ERP and that will take out some of the ecosystem. Even when you've kind of rationalized those activities that you might reasonably take internally and deliver equally as effectively, if not the external marketplace might do, it's still quite a complex ecosystem of organizations that you still need to marshal and you still need to bring together to be able to provide a joined up service. What we've seen in just to sort of bring to conclusion that's happened fundamentally differently during the period of COVID is all of that complexity has evaporated in instances where it's had to. Rather than all of the supplier organizations turning up individually and trying to solve parts of a broader HR problem by themselves, we have been forced to turn up collaboratively and to forget the fact that we are different providers working under different contracts. And we've had to understand that actually all of our activities need to be brought together into a single service interface so that it feels like it's one solution solving big problems. And we've had to look at new and different ways of integrating our technology. So rather than people having to juggle access to 6 or 7 systems, how you can actually bring all of those systems together into a single orchestration layer that means you can start to combine permanent and non-permanent recruitment activities in a new and joined up way. And the little box that appeared up in the top left-hand corner is that we actually move to a model of global business services partnerships, where actually all of these things are actually dealt with as part of a single ecosystem, rather than lots of individual separate contracts. Now, if you'd asked me 3 months ago, did I think those things were possible? Did I think those things could happen? And could I give you a single example of where that had actually worked? My answer would have been, no, it's a lovely slide deck that does lots of nice things in building in PowerPoint and is quite creative. I couldn't give you an example. You see here today, I can give you 3 immediate, huge examples how all of these new behaviours have actually and had operational impact. Many of you will be aware of the test and trace campaign is now launching. Although if you're Matt Hancock, you'll call it test, trace, track, whatever. I think we all saw the press conference. In simple terms, a challenge was put down by government, by the NHS, for a single provider, Serco, to find 21,000 people to actually manage and support the test and trace campaign. If Serco had demonstrated traditional supplier behaviours within the HR space, they would have tried to solve that themselves. They would have dealt with their supply chain without the customer involved, and there would not be 21,000 people stood up today. That isn't how Serco behaved. Serco went out to all of the people in their PSL, all of the people in their supply chain, and said, we want you to come together to the table with us as one. And Capita, we want you to be part of that. And Teleperformance, we want you to be part of that. So for the first time, a prime supplier on a contract and key members of the PSL all came together as one organisation to be able to do something that we never thought would be possible. From our own experience, we were contacted at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. I remember it. I was having my 1-hour constitutional walk that we were still allowed to have back in early March. And the call from the NHS was, Andy, it's Friday evening. When we get up on Monday, I want you to have 200 people ready to support with pre-employment checking and onboarding for the NHS returners programme. I would love to tell you that Capita has 200 people sitting around that we can magically appear out of thin air. We would not have been able to respond to that request if our technology providers and our other partners, again, hadn't broken down the normal boundaries of contractual relationships and collaboration. If they hadn't come to the table with us, we would not have been able to process 25,000 returners back into the NHS over the past 6 to 8 weeks. So I think what we've tried to demonstrate really, really quickly, and I'm aware that I'm 4 minutes over time, so sorry, Lucy, is change, transformation in the HR and recruitment space is an inevitability. It will be fundamental and it will be utterly different from anything that we've seen before. It will happen faster than we've ever experienced anything before. But what COVID has shown us is if we think creatively around how we collaborate as suppliers into organisations such as yourself, and how organisations like YPO and their frameworks help those suppliers to think differently around how they come together to solve massive problems, we are very, very optimistic about the future for HR and resourcing in the public sector, and we think amazing things can happen. And now Lucy's going to decide whether I've got time to tell you the secret or whether we're going to end there and you will never know what Project Play Nicely was. Thank you.
I feel like we need to hear the secret, Andy.
always leave people wanting to know more. Lisa.
Yeah. Everybody's like waiting in anticipation for the
I need to look on the chat box if anyone's been.
I've not seen anything directly to me or anything in the group, but I don't know, sometimes you get them direct to yourself. So just if you can have a quick look.
So the best example, and it wasn't called Project Play Nicely, by the way. That's just the Capita term for it. At the beginning of the COVID crisis, when I think organisations across both the public sector and also logistics companies and retail companies were very, very concerned that they were going to have to go into mass recruitment exercises to bring in large numbers of people to be able to do things which they hadn't done before, simultaneously with organisations putting huge amounts of people into furlough. The Cabinet Office started doing rabbit ears here, a secret project to look at how recruitment organisations and staffing firms might actually come together in a completely different way to stop acting as single competitive organisations fighting for market share and trying to make placement fees, but under something that the working title was the Government Workforce Exchange, sponsored by the REC. Would we all forget our partisan commercial orientation, and would we come together and actually form an interactive marketplace for sharing candidates and matching those to organisations in desperate need? Would we come together and work as a single organisation? Would we step away from our normal contracts and normal supplier relationships and just do something in the public good? I have to tell you, I'm very proud to say that all of the major staffing agencies, and most of those that are on the YPO framework, all stepped forward and went, yes, we will do that. If there's something that has to be done because it's in the best interest of the country during COVID, we will set aside all of our differences and all of our commercial orientations, and we will all do what's right. And again, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, did I think that could ever happen? I would have laughed raucously. But it did happen. In the end, the government decided not to go ahead with the project because that demand pattern didn't manifest itself and the normal mechanisms were able to supply those. But as a real test for can organisations behave differently and come together for the public good, 100% they can. And I challenge you all to challenge your current partners and Capita and other organisations to behave in a similar way when we come out of COVID, and for us all to think differently about how we support you to drive this change and drive this transformation and do the right thing for your people and do the right things for your service users. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Really good points there at the end around obviously working together, and it's something that YPO have been doing as well, working alongside the other PBOs as well over the last few weeks. So it just shows how everybody can come together at a time when it's needed as well. So, so yeah, really good presentation and slides. Thank you, Andy.
If you notice how we all now wave.
Yes, we do. We do. We all now wave.
My entire life. We always do this.
So I can't see any questions coming through, but everybody's got the opportunity to send things through afterwards as well if they want to do that. So I can always get in touch and let you know if anything comes through afterwards.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Thank you very much.
Good. I think we're dropping off now. Is that the process?
Yeah, you can. You're welcome to stay on. Yeah, you're welcome to stay on. But I'm going to pass over to John now at Comensura in Welp as well. So thank you very much, Andy.
Cheers.
I'm just going to bring John forward. Hi, John. Sorry, just brought you forward now. Thank you.
Hello.
Are you okay?
Yes, not too bad, not too bad. I always hate looking at myself on the screen.
Sorry.
Here we go.
Hopefully you'll be able to share your, is it your screen we need to see, or do I need to add anybody else?
No, it's going to be, you've got host disabled participant screen sharing at the moment, so it will be myself and Kerry actually.
Okay, let me have a look. Okay.
Shall I try that now?
Yeah, try it now. I'll just find Kerry. Do you want me to bring?
Yeah, okay, right. So, it works. Okay, just going to get out that one.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's come through.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, see if that come full screen. There we go. Lovely. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm John Milton, and I'm going to be joined by Kerry Pearson, and we're going to be talking about why social value is important now more than ever. So just to show, well, obviously you've seen what I look like, but Kerry's going to be going on in a second, and you'll be able to see her as well when she speaks. Kerry's one of our head of services. I'm a director here at Comensura. Quick bit of background to Comensura in case you don't know us. We've been going for nearly 20 years. We work with 120 different organisations across the UK and Australia, and we manage about £700 million worth of customer spend. We're very much in the vendor neutral space, but we have three models. Probably the most familiar to a lot of people on the call will be the classic model we operate, but we also operate an adaptive model and an essential model, which is essentially technology and procurement only, and all of those can be accessed from the YPO framework. Mission is to find a smarter way to work with customers with complex staffing needs, and supported throughout the process by 2,500 supply agencies, and we have our mantra of being easy to do business with, and see those 2,500 supply agencies as very much our partners. And as you can see just on the bottom, we've got our membership of Social Value UK, and also we are supporting the Armed Forces Covenant as well. So given the amount of money that the government has pumped into the economy to address COVID-19, I would imagine that many organisations are going to be focusing, and I suppose the knowledge that that money's got to be paid back at some stage and through the public purse. I would imagine that many organisations will be focusing on closely managing their budgets from now on in. With this in mind, we wanted to highlight the importance of maintaining a focus on delivering social value, how managed service providers like ourselves can help, and also what we see as opportunities that will emerge from what's been quite an unprecedented period of change for everyone. Firstly, we'll talk about what the recession means and the types of support that we can offer, and MSPs can offer. We'll then talk through how working practices have changed through digital communication and the opportunities these provide, and then the new opportunities presented by the work from home revolution. We're not here to provide all the answers, but hopefully some options and some food for thought, and ways in which we can work together to support social value. Okay. So given the lockdown and the resulting lack of economic activity, We know for certain that a recession is on the way, with the true impacts likely to be visible once businesses are asked to contribute to furlough from August, and when the furlough arrangements end in October. We've listed a few of the obvious industries likely to be impacted and already impacted by by COVID and the lockdown. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research has estimated that unemployment will double this year, increasing probably by a further 800,000 in the early part of next year, before the economy starts to recover. The graph on the left hand side just shows you where that's going to sit. I guess we're not expecting to get to the levels of the 80s and the 90s, probably comparable, I guess, really to the last recession, 2010, 2011, that sort of time. So councils have already started seeing their revenues fall over during the lockdown period, and we've listed some other outcomes from the process as well. So reduced council income, we mentioned, increased demand on housing supports, so people are defaulting on their payments from housing, increased likelihood of local SME business failure, and increased demand for social care in myriad formats, really. So it's really important, I guess, really to make the point that there are lots and lots of impacts that are going to be coming, I guess, from a recession. A lot of this information was taken from a report that was issued at the last recession about 9-10 years ago, to say we have to be very, very aware that these things may happen. Moving on to how we can help, I need to now bring in Kerry. Are you there, Kerry?
I am. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kerry Pearson. I'm one of the heads of services for Comensura, and I deal with the public sector. And just to give you a bit of background about me, for those who don't know me, I've worked with Comensura now for 14 years. I work on the operational side, so I'm client facing, and I spend an awful lot of time in the councils, solutioning and finding ways of working that benefits the council, the communities, and the local economy. One of my passions is social value, so hence why John's asked me to come along today. So our MSPs, we can't solve all the issues, but we can help, and we can try and get some of our people back to work. As managed service providers, we have access to thousands of agencies, and all of them can offer expertise for those affected by the recession and to help deliver our social value promises. So, for example, Venn Group, who's one of our suppliers, who I believe are on the call today, they have been working with us in partnership with one of our councils in central London to offer CV writing support, interview techniques, and try and help people in the local area, in the local borough, to become employment ready. What we then do is we work in partnership with the council's workability programme, and we then position those candidates not only to the council but also to local businesses within the borough, and help them get back to work. It not only benefits obviously the candidates themselves, it also benefits the local authorities, because they're having local people generating income and spending that in the local economy. So it's a good thing for the boroughs to be doing this. We also have work at a senior level, and we deal with people in coaching and mentoring, and if they've been away from the workplace for a while, we try and work to bring them back up to get their skills back up and running, so that they can go back into the workplace at that senior level and deliver the value that the councils need them to do. We also look at transferable opportunities. So COVID-19 has brought quite a lot of opportunities for redeployment, and there's been an awful lot of that going on across our customer base, which we've been managing through the CNET platform. And this is not just for temporary workers, it's for their permanent staff as well. We've been working to relocate them into different areas of the business that needs extra support. So we've had people moving from transport, for example, or waste management into the customer service centres, those kinds of things. And that's been really, really beneficial, not only for the people that work for the councils, but also for the council, and making sure that they have the right people in the right place to do the job that they need them to do. The other thing we're doing at the moment as well, which I'm quite proud of, is we're working with one of the councils on the South Coast who have very close ties with the Navy, and we're, through our Armed Forces Covenant, we're looking at redeploying veterans once they leave the Navy, getting them skilled ready and positioning them within the local authorities and the local businesses in the city. So it's all been very positive stuff, and as much as COVID-19 has caused issues, and yes, there is likely to be a recession, actually there's an awful lot of positives we can take from it, and I think the more we work in partnership with our suppliers and with yourselves as our customers, the more we can do to help our local economies and our communities. So some of the things we've been doing here on this slide, John himself has been working with the council in central London around the workability scheme and getting local people back into work. Hua, at the top there, is our managing director. She's been into schools and she's been talking about how we can help school leavers decide which career path they want, give them opportunities, promote our local authority customers, and basically open up the world to them of, did you ever think of working for the public sector? This is what it can offer you. We've also been holding workshops across the UK with different suppliers and different customers in trying to find new ways of bringing local people into the councils. This has included a lot of employer branding, a lot of candidate packs. We've been using video technology to promote the work that the councils do and the team ethos. And that's been a really positive move, especially on our permanent recruitment front, in actually attracting people into the local government industries. So that's all been great. The other thing we've been working on with Serco, one of our customers, is on women coming out of prison, reoffenders, and helping them to have their CVs rewritten, to help them become work ready to go back into the workplace. And that's been really, really beneficial, not only for them, but for us. It's very rare that we can actually really make a difference to people's lives in the work that we do. And this is something that really does. So it's very beneficial. And yes, looking forward to doing a lot more of that in the future. So, as John said, this isn't just about us and the suppliers, it's also about yourselves as our customers, and what you can do to help the people that work in your industry. A recent poll by Total Jobs suggests that 70% of respondents are considering career changes as a result of lockdown. Doesn't surprise me. There's been a lot of changes because of lockdown. Apparently the rental market's gone sky high as well, as a lot of people are moving out of their family accommodation. So if as authorities you're able to start considering what outcomes you want to see from worker roles, there will be a real opportunity for you to support the industries impacted by the recession. So for example, there's a massive impact on Corona on the aviation industry. I live near Gatwick Airport, and obviously a lot of the people I know in our community work for the airport or the airlines in some way, and it's been a huge problem for them trying to find work or being furloughed or made redundant. So there's likely to be a lot of staff looking for work that come for that industry. Customer service roles is fantastic for people that work in the aviation industry, because obviously air hostesses, air stewards, service desk helpers at the airport, they do an excellent job of customer service and handling difficult situations every day. So there is an opportunity there. We're working with attracting young people into the public centre, as I said. I'm actually a scout leader, so I'm very passionate about youth development, and I do a lot of work with some of our older explorer scouts around career development. Where do they want to go, choosing their A-levels, their college education opportunities, and I think addressing the imbalance in what they think they want to do and what is actually able to do within the local economy is really beneficial for both parties. And we do a lot of work around employer branding and actually pushing out why it is so great to work in the public sector to people out there in schools and youth groups. The picture at the bottom shows how oversubscribed certain sectors are and how undersubscribed others are too. So we can provide direction on these types of things for the local people, youth people, schools, all those kinds of things, and we can provide a direction of where they want to go and where their skills could be most useful moving forward in the future and for employment opportunities. Sure.
Thank you very much. Okay, new ways of working. So here we are on a webinar, and I imagine most of you have spent the last 12 weeks communicating via some form of digital communication. And as you can see from this slide, the number of people using applications such as Zoom has increased exponentially since the start of the lockdown. So we've gone from December 2019, 10 million people using it, to 300 million people using it now. This means that effectively a large proportion of the population got very used to using and communicating and receiving messages via video, which in turn provides us with additional opportunities to support social values. So video is a great way of getting across messages about how people can get support, which we can promote via social media channels for our customers. And we're starting to see our partners are offering things like live stream events for CV workshops, so things like Facebook Live, where you can tune in at a certain point in time and obviously see the specialists talking about those types of things, providing support for interview techniques and so on. So some of the things that we touched upon in the previous area. In our model, we've embraced video fully in many ways, and amongst one of the things that you can do within the system now is you basically request video interview. And I expect that most other MSPs can do the same via their technology, but clearly there's some good benefits from that side of things, and environmental benefits, so efficiency benefits and environmental benefits. Okay, moving on to, I guess we call it the return of the high street. So will this happen? I guess, is crystal ball time in that side of things, really. In many ways, the transition from office to home working is creating a revolution. So 98% of people, according to Gartner, would like the option of working from home, and organisations are definitely becoming more willing to allow this. I've spoken to a number of people, our suppliers actually, and they've gone from strictly no one works at home to yeah, we're going to give them the option 2 days a week or 5 days a week potentially in some cases, which is a huge sort of change for them. I guess this is not only because there's been very little impact on productivity, which was the big fear, but also because pandemic management has now got to be part of any organisation's business continuity policy. So what this means is then that a significant proportion of demand for goods and services will switch from being bought in cities to towns and to rural areas. So what this could mean is that it could provide a real opportunity for local businesses to meet demand and to help revitalise the high street. So local high streets potentially may well attract inward investment because that's where the demand is. There will be positive impacts on the environment because there will be less travelling happening. And there's also the opportunity to incorporate a portion of the workforce that may have previously been kept out of certain roles. So, for example, people with disabilities that have prevented them from travelling, or workers with onerous childcare responsibilities. So how can MSPs support that process? Well, it's really about helping you to communicate opportunities to stimulate demand, I guess, is how we do. We live in a connected world. It's just you've got to join up the dots and make sure that you are actually connected. We've got access to thousands of agencies, and that means thousands and thousands of workers, all of whom use local goods and services. And if there is, from you as customers, are able to provide information on facilities available, so maybe things like property that you've got coming available, if there's local business discounts or offers and services in general, there's a great opportunity to share this with agencies and their workers to stimulate demand and to increase local wealth.
Can I just add on that as well, John, just before we finish? The green agenda is obviously a massive topic, and it's been on local authorities' radar for a very long time. I think COVID-19 has shown that actually a lot of us can work from home, a lot of us will continue to do so, and a lot of people have taken to walking to work or cycling and staying away from public transport. So I think actually the message from us is COVID-19. It has been difficult. It's not been great. Obviously, we've lost a lot of our loved ones, and people have been affected by this personally. But there could be some real positives to come out of this on a social value side and on an environmental impact. So I think the more that we're aware of that, and the more that we want to work together to find solutions to actually push those agendas forward, I think this is a really good time that we can make a difference to the local economies and local communities we live in.
Yeah, exactly. I think yeah, it's all about the art of the possible. It's kind of putting the out there, and let's just toss around the ideas and see what we can do, and then we can go away and be creative and innovative and start to look at different things in there. Thank you, Kerry. That's us done. As I said earlier, the aim of the webinar is not to provide all the answers, but to give you some of the options and to hopefully give you a bit of food for thought. Certainly for me, the seismic change that's going to happen because of this change in the way that we've been working is really mind-boggling. You know, so it's you know, lots of things to consider from that side of things. But I think there's real opportunities that you know, by joining those dots and getting connected, we can start to work together to really support social value initiatives.
Brilliant. Thank you, John and Kerry. Conscious of time, but we have had a question come through. I don't know if you can see it as well in the chat box, so I can just read it out to you. So we've had a question saying, are you finding that customers are starting to think about social value in their recruitment more so after COVID-19? So maybe do you think people are thinking about it differently as well and thinking about it more?
Yes, very much so. I think it's just become something that people have realised is a real opportunity to make some changes. And I think obviously because the economy is changing and the recession, there are opportunities there to divert revenue in different ways, and to help the people that live in our local areas get back to work. So we've had an awful lot of customers who have come to us asking about, as I said, reoffenders, veterans, people with disabilities, how we can help actually support their local residents to get back into the workplace. We've been doing that via some of the local workability services that are available, but also through Skillstream and the Job Centre and other bodies that are out there. So they are talking a lot more about it. They're a lot more receptive to actually implementing some of those policies, and I think it's very clear now on such things as the YPO framework that it is becoming a real hot topic for local government, and I'm very glad about that personally. But I think, yes, definitely there has been a massive increase in interest due to COVID-19, and I hope it will continue for a long time after.
Yeah, just a quick plug at the end there. We held a webinar a couple of weeks back which talks about how our customers have been, across all of our different sectors, have been sort of affected by the whole lockdown and this sort of situation. So if you're interested in getting those insights, then we'll make them available. I think YPO have got access to them anyway, just to have that more rounded side of things.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, both of you. If we do get anything else, I'll let you know afterwards. I can share any questions, but thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Brill. So I'm now going to pass over to Sarah, if I can just find you on my list. Spare me a second, everybody. I think I found you, Sarah. I think I'm trying to pull you forward, but I need to. Have you got access to share your screen, Sarah? Can you see the access?
I'll have a look. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay. Let me just quickly share my screen. Hopefully people can still see me as well as
yes.
the screen. Morning, everyone. Appreciate we're sort of running over a little bit, but we will, I'll start to go through the presentation. So my name's Sarah France-Gorton. I recognise some of the colleagues on the webinar today, so morning to everyone. I work for North Yorkshire County Council and I head up a service called Resourcing Solutions. We're a supplier on the YPO framework, so thank you to YPO for inviting us here today. It's really interesting for a local authority as I guess a supplier to be part of this type of framework. And on the back of the other two presentations this morning, it's interesting how the world of work is continuing to change. The resourcing solution is a bit of a hybrid service, so we certainly first and foremost work for North Yorkshire County Council and therefore are an in-house talent solution, but we've built over the years beyond that to provide solutions around recruitment to a high number of other sort of businesses and clients. We recruit for over 400 clients, and as a result of which have sort of, I guess, an income stream of around about £2 million on the sort of back of that. So quite an interesting mixed model that we deliver, but very much rooted in public sector and delivering solutions in that way, in a non-for-profit sort of situation. This morning, really the sort of topic is about reflecting on recruiting to social care during COVID-19, and oh wow, has that been interesting, and a bit of a roller coaster ride really. So I thought in starting that I would do maybe a little bit of a reflection as to, I guess, the wonderful storm we are still enduring, but that started obviously towards the earlier part of the year. And if I think back to March, when I was sort of working with social care providers, both in private sector across different local authorities, these were some of the things that we were working with them on and understanding their circumstance around. So as the infection started to rise, they were clearly planning for what does this mean for services, a significant and quite seismic immediate increase in demand for their services at a time where their staff absence was particularly high and potentially forecast to increase as well, whether that be staff having infections or isolating because of vulnerabilities, or of course complex family lives. We've all had to sort of change our home and work styles of working really. That the welfare of the people that social care was sort of serving for, and of course thinking about how we provide PPE when there is an international shortage and a massive increase for that. With the emergency and what seemed to be changing on sort of a minute by minute basis, who knew we'd all be glued to the TV set at 5 o'clock every day to find out what was happening, and as local authorities and social care providers they were too. But emergency legislation kept coming in, meaning seismic shifts in operating models in social care. And just to give an instance of one, when the Emergency COVID Act came into place, it basically meant that social care had to discharge people from hospital within a 3-hour window and operate that 24/7. Now that was services that typically operated largely Monday to Friday, and typical sort of office hours. That was a seismic shift that they had to deal with. In addition to learning more about a new infection and how to control that alongside social distancing themselves, and of course trying to deal with this huge issue alongside a fear of safety, for the people they were caring for their own staff and for their own families actually. So quite a challenging time when I look back, and it's easy to forget that as you sort of move through the weeks. At that point in time, the conversations that people were having with me is that, you know, we need staff, we need it quickly, we need a lot of them, but we need staff to add value. Actually, we don't just need bodies with it. They need to be able to make an impact and absolutely not distract us from our day-to-day operation, but add to it. So I have to say I've had easier recruitment asks to try and increase workforce at a time where the media was constantly about people losing their lives to this infection and constant talk about people in the NHS and the care sector unfortunately losing their lives as a result of the job that they've had on front line. Now, recruiting to social care, I'm sure most people will agree, was a challenge anyway. It wasn't necessarily an attractive sector to recruit to, relatively low pay, working various different shift patterns and lots of challenges around that. So yeah, I've had easier recruitment briefs in my time, I have to be honest. So yeah, what are the type of things, I guess, that we did to try and meet the demand really? So yeah, we started to think about how can we attract in all different fronts. And we sort of spent, I guess, time investing in lots of different areas so that it is very much multi-stream. So of course, social media is a big part of that. COVID was obviously pretty much the only game in town, if you like, so of course we wanted to make sure we were linked to those streams, and that our sort of recruitment campaigns, if you like, were linked to them, and particularly the ones around social care, where we were coming to the fore, such as Clap for Carers, etc. A lot of people have mentioned already, actually, in the presentations today about the labour market being affected in particular areas such as tourism, hospitality, retail, transport, etc. So, of course, we would target people working in those areas naturally. The media was, of course, elevating social care, which I guess to a recruiter is a really good news. But, of course, what they were talking about was it being really detrimental to people's lives. And therefore, we had to balance those communications of personal stories. So, you know, working with customers, working with individual care homes, what are the personal stories of the staff? What's happening with you? What's happening with the people that are receiving care? And one of the things that's been really, when we've all been in lockdown and had a lack of human contact, those personal stories that have sort of been brought to the fore through COVID have really resonated with all of us. So we were trying to replay that at a local level in local communities. You know, about couples celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary through glass. You know, those wonderful pictures of creating those hugs through plastic, those pictures of connecting families, which care workers were doing through using iPads, etc. And those are the personal stories and the difference that those carers made. And so connecting with those and trying to get those out into the sort of locality areas. And maximising, I guess, the swell of appreciation. Social care has certainly been the poor relation, I guess, to professions and things such as the NHS. And it's been really nice to see that some of the recognition for social care has come through the campaign. Mentioning about targeting the labour market, we also got direct, and this is interesting, a real topic of people coming together despite individual motivations, I guess. But we worked quite closely with a lot of businesses in specific location areas. So we would be in contact with hotel owners, restaurant owners, transport provision, local airports, etc., to understand what staff did they have available, whether that be on furlough or whether that be that they released them. We knew that our requirement would be a temporary one, and therefore was that a mutual benefit for us to engage their staff that would then potentially be available later down the line as we perhaps got into sort of, you know, working alongside COVID or post-COVID for mutual benefit. And we contacted a lot of education providers to connect directly with their students, so people who had been released from studies a little earlier as well, so that was an area we connected a lot with. And we also looked into the sector, so again, talking about that mutuality, normally we'll be in conflict and in competition for staff, but we were chatting with people who maybe had daycare services or respite services, who maybe weren't seeing an increase in demand, and we could then again second staff so that they could be sure that when those day services open again, that staff can go back to them. So that was about retention as well as recruitment of staff in a lot of those conversations. Worked with clients to find out whether or not they wanted us to do direct work for them on their behalf, a little bit like what Comensura was mentioning around contacting returners, retirees, secondments, moving staff internally, utilising skills and abilities in very different ways in response to the obviously the increase in demand. So those were the different type of things that we attracted. I guess it's one thing attracting them, it's another thing getting them frontline in regulated activity really quickly. And obviously there is a lot of things in public sector and in legislation that sort of puts barriers in the way, and often rightly so, in around safety. We're looking after people's lives. So a lot of it is there for good reason, but of course creates a huge amount of friction in that recruitment system, I guess. So first and foremost, first thing we said is, okay, instead of having an end-to-end, often when you do large-scale recruitment, you default to an applicant tracking system and, digital journey. And we sort of ditched that, actually. And it's interesting, I was chatting to the director at Sainsbury's just yesterday, and they did exactly the same, where it's a bit like, okay, you choose. You've said, you've expressed an interest that you want to help us at this time of particular emergency. If you want to send us your CV, if you want to apply online, if you want to call us, if you want to drop a pack in at your local sort of care-related sort of facility, then you choose. That's fine. And we would then basically almost do a digital assist without them knowing and translate that, if you like, so that we could manage a very fluid recruitment process. And the thing for me was, applicants should then have almost been viewed as volunteers. So often recruitment managers and hirers are almost, they're looking at it from their perspective, aren't they? Where in this swell of interest, we needed to harness that interest really quickly, almost like as if they were a volunteer, and harness that interest and get it to frontline really quickly. So it was all about, I guess, experience. And that's not new in terms of recruiters' thoughts. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. But if I'm being really honest, this emergency has brought into really sharp focus for me that we talk about experience, but we don't always execute it. We sort of do a little bit around the edges. We extended flexible working, and that's for all. So a lot in the social care system, a lot of them work 2 rotas to operate, obviously, and deliver their service. Now, understand entirely why that's operationally necessary, but it's a huge barrier to recruitment. So we worked with providers to get a little bit more open to suggestion around what might work around staffing. So that dialogue around what individuals could do and how that might help an operation. And it's been really useful to understand through this pandemic just a little bit of a shift in that, well, let's see if we can make it work rather than no, it won't work. And that's been a much more flexible, adaptable approach when we've been in the crisis. Pretty much what's happened in our experiences across a lot of the sort of care facilities that we've recruited to has been about an enhanced recruiter role. So managers have focused on their operation and their emergency response and asked really the recruiter to come upstream. So recruiters have attracted, have assessed, have made the hiring decision and have made and got all clearances. Now, we are not a temporary agency, so appreciate that is what a temporary agency model would be. That's not who we are. So we recruit on behalf of clients and complement them as to however they want us to, really. And they trusted us to make their operating and hiring decisions for us, which was helpful to make sure that they could focus. And one of the things on reflection of that is that what we found is hiring managers typically don't necessarily like recruiting. Recruiters love recruiting. I love recruiting. So it's been really interesting about the experience of the candidate and the engagement with that, the ability to harness what they need and get them to frontline, and the managers to be involved in a process whereby they are benefiting from it rather than it being a chore or an admin burden. One of the things managers said at the front, we need staff to add value, so they have to hit the ground running, and that's the phrase that's always used, isn't it, in recruitment from a hiring manager perspective. And quite frankly, you know, if there were hundreds of people sat waiting to work in care pre-COVID, we would have already recruited them. It's a challenging sector to recruit too, so that, you know, all of a sudden providing them hundreds of people with care experience, frankly, wasn't going to happen. So we had conversations with them about trying to tease out, okay, let's just get back to almost basics. What are the most important things? And, you know, time and time again in social care, they would say, okay, someone's absolutely got to be passionate about care. They've got to see when someone needs help. They've got to be able to not walk by and make sure that that support is there for them. They've got to roll the sleeves up and make it happen. You know, so we identified those caring, empathy, strong work ethic type values, and that's what we recruited to rather than experience. And then certainly indeed we've got pilots, bricklayers, drivers, haulage people working in care right now, and who would have thought that post-COVID? The hiring managers would have thought we were a wee bit crazy with that. And actually the feedback from hiring managers has been, do you know what? They've come in, they're motivated, they want to make a difference, they want to care for people, they wanted to help out in an emergency, and therefore we've harnessed their values and their motivation, and it's worked really well. We've talked about technology, and my God, I don't know how we would have coped with this pandemic if it wasn't for the technology that we all rely on at the moment. But do you know what? We've become a little slave to it. So I've talked about the sort of ditching the sort of, having to absolutely have everything application by online. And it really helps us to do not get it wrong. But we've moved it where it's creating friction, where it's been a bit of a barrier, where it's been a bit clunky. And getting back to using technology to help the core aim of what you're trying to do rather than being a slave to it. And that is something I will constantly try to remind myself of post-COVID as we move forward, to harness it, not to be a slave to it really. And I mentioned we're recruiting in regulated activity, it has to be safe. So we would, pretty much we deliver safe recruitment related training. We write the most wonderful, gorgeous HR policies around safer recruitment, and DBS checks, and you need a reference, and you have to explore gaps, and certificates of good conduct, and all the rest of it. And actually, on a reflection to that is that, having a team of experienced recruiters that are expert in that, and rather than trying to disseminate that to sort of 800 or 1,000 recruiting managers and expect them to get it and expect them to care, it's been really fast to be able to get those, and that's a bit of a learn, I guess, in terms of efficiencies and effectiveness moving forward. Now, just to give you a bit of a feel, taking those type of approaches was challenging. It's difficult, but we managed to reach high volume through some of those methods of attraction, and take applicants through and get people started. Just a couple of examples there for a couple of clients in a couple of different campaigns that we ran. And equally, whilst the vast majority of the demand that was coming our way was very much for care and support workers to join the front line, we're also supported professionally. And typically that has been about changing recruitment to remote, convenient, fast recruitment, building manager confidence in that process, and building candidate confidence with the use of technology. And quite often, certainly in social care, a remote video enabled recruitment process was not something pre-COVID that typically happened. So yeah, it's been more about supporting candidates and managers with the confidence around that. And one thing that was really interesting is that actually we've had zero withdrawal, and this is something as a bit of a learn, I guess, for people thinking about whether or not remote recruitment is a staple of the future. And that is that actually candidates would say, instead of needing to take a day off work, I could actually engage in your recruitment process whilst I worked and whilst I had a busy life. Those are the type of things that would have perhaps prevented them or maybe made them withdraw in the past. So that might be a bit of a takeaway to think, actually, how can we utilise remote recruitment moving forward? So I thought, just to finish, we would maybe have a bit of a reflection. So I think a lot of us have been quite staggered as to what has been possible through the COVID emergency that we thought was either impossible before it or frankly very difficult. And these are a couple of reflections for me about whether or not these might feature quite strongly in the future. A lot of us this morning, the presenters, we've all touched on the fact that unemployment will rise. I think that's pretty almost a dead cert, if you like. But I would hate to think that people thought it was going to change from anything other than a candidate-driven market and one that was based on experience. And that's experience of the candidate, of the experience of them transitioning to be a staff member, but also the experience of the hiring manager and how they engage and support recruitment in a more sort of engaged way, but in a way that they're supported well to recruit easily, swiftly and professionally. I do wonder whether or not, thinking back to the Capita presentation earlier this morning from an Andy's perspective, whether there is a need to harness people's strengths and abilities. And, as I said, the impact 20 recruiters can have, being specialist, passionate practitioners supporting 800 to 1,000 managers recruit, then let people do the role that they're passionate and skilled about and let them work seamlessly together. And I think that's quite an interesting play as to how that relationship might work in the future. I hope the adaptability and the mindset of let's make it try and let's make it work stays with us, and values recruitment too. Technology we've laboured on, we've mentioned about the labour market, and you know, we did mention also, I know the other two presenters, about budget pressures moving forward. And absolutely, you know, it would be remiss of us not to plan for significant pressures, whether that be in public sector or actually lots of other sectors, and how using some of the things above might allow us to meet some of those budget pressures and some of those opportunities. So yeah, there's no going back, but there might be some good things that perhaps we can take into the future to help us adapt to sort of resourcing solutions as we move to live with COVID or post-COVID pressures, really. That was my reflections. I hope some of it's resonated with some people and give people some ideas about what they might think about back at their organisations and how it might help. But equally, really happy to take questions. Appreciate you tight on time.
Thanks, Sarah. That was brilliant. We've not seen any questions come through, but obviously, if there's anything that comes through afterwards, then we can get in touch and let you know.
Yeah, of course.
But thank you so much.
Oh, you're very, very welcome.
So
I hope everyone's keeping safe, and I guess a last word for me would be it's been quite staggering what our social care sector could achieve.
Definitely.
And I, for one, am really thankful for, you know, some of the great work that they do in terms of keeping people safe and care at the moment, and you know, putting their own lives, I guess, at risk is quite admirable. So a big thank you for the sector. Really.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Great.
So I'll just try and get back over to myself. I don't know if I can. You might need to come out of your presentation. That's it.
Yeah, no
brilliant.
problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yes, thank you to everybody this morning for joining, and obviously thank you to our providers as well for giving us those good overviews on the key topic areas. So we'll be able to share the content out to everybody and copies of this webinar as well if anybody wants to see that afterwards. And if you've got any questions at all, you can drop us an email at hrsolutions@ypo.co.uk and we'll be happy to answer anything at all. So thank you again, everybody. Hope you have a brilliant day, and hope to catch up with everybody again soon. Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks.
Thanks. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.